So I'm essentially an industrial designer, studied bachelor's in product design, worked a brief period of time with appliances and let's say consumer goods. When I was moving to Bangalore to take up this opportunity with Alstom, I was more inspired by the fact that it's a space which will give me much larger, let's say, spectrum and landscape to contribute for. In my view, is fundamental right for everybody. And what Rail does is that inclusivity for the larger spectrum of our society. And every product that we design or let's say deploy in different markets has a critical element to it because it has to serve for 30 to 40 years of lifespan, right? As you said.
Yeah, might be maybe creating sometimes, sort of a pressure on you to know about the world. Just want to know your learning habits and how you know about things and make sure that whatever you're bringing to the table is sort of top notch.
Yeah, I feel.
Yeah. Groundbreakin.
How's it going, Snehal? Welcome to the Groundbreakin.
Thank you very much, Deepak. It's I think one of my memorable Saturdays in Bangalore. I would say it's fun afternoon in Groundbreaking with you.
Yeah. What are your usual Saturdays? What do they look like?
Mostly after a week, Saturdays are a little lazy for many of us, but morning's pretty much chill. Afternoon, I catch up with some of my friends or some of the other discussions, advisory, or some contributions on other engagements. Pretty much like that.
If you can, introduce yourself and maybe give it a go through of your journey for our audience.
Yeah. So I'm essentially an industrial designer, studied bachelor's in product design, worked a brief period of time with appliances and let's say consumer goods, interning with Bajaj appliances back in the time, designing ceiling fans and mixer grinders and the essential products of Indian households. During the same time, I applied for my master's in NID and I applied for transportation design. So at that point in time, it was in my mind I was exploring because I wanted to check the waters for because NID and IIT both were quite competitive at that point in time. Fortunately, I got through in NID, finished my transportation design from NID, and also during that same period of time, I was doing my exchange program in Germany. And I would say that has opened up a lot of my viewpoints towards what as design and as a designer you are supposed to.
I mean, first of all, I'm a big fan of Alstom. I think where you're heading the design team. And what I've noticed in your journey that you've worked around one of the top OEMs. Closely work with the strategy and design. Brands like Tata Motors, Hyundai. How is it different from all these OEMs to a company that's working on much larger locomotive sector if that's correct?
Yeah. No, I honestly, Deepak, it's fundamentally the key question that I asked myself as well when I was transitioning from, let's say, car design professional journey towards more of a mass mobility and transportation design scenarios. But I can recall maybe my intentions of doing my studies in transportation was also not essentially towards very styling driven approach of car design. I when I started my career with Tata Motors, I was essentially designing commercial vehicles like trucks and pickup trucks, buses, and very I would say functional at the same time very contributing transportation modes. So of course during the period of let's say past 15 years moved from one role to the other essentially with car design. When I was moving to Bangalore to take up this opportunity with Alstom, I was more inspired by the fact that it's a space which will give me much larger, let's say, spectrum and landscape to contribute for. So, in car design, I'm a big fan of cars and I have continued to do that. But I think as a mass mobility solution, we as designers, we have much more to contribute. And I think that was my push to
What I really find it interesting around public transport is that, for example, maybe for automotive and if you're designing a car or working around car industry, you might not be designing for, maybe 1 decade, right? You may be designing for 7-8 years where this car is going to be relevant. But I think with public transportation, it's you need to design something that maybe stays relevant for 20 years. Would just curious to know your thoughts on how does it actually go, about your problem statements and the projects that you do, the strategies that you build.
So most of the times, public transportations are also driven by a lot of government agencies and authorities, right? So in terms of urban planning, in terms of your national corridors, in terms of your infrastructure, and hence it has a its own challenges in terms of maturity and getting it out
Yeah.
on time, because there are many stakeholders who need to be on the same page, right? So
Yeah.
rail is a massive infrastructure in general, but also it creates much deeper impact on, in my opinion, on community and societal developments. Like mobility is, in my view, is fundamental right for everybody.
Yeah.
And what rail does is that inclusivity for the larger spectrum of our society.
Yeah, it's also sort of a reflection of the cities, right? For example, I mean, I'm thinking of Paris public transport, and
Yeah,
they have I think most of their trams and trains are by Alstom,
right.
and how they kind of with the CMF they try to depict the city and like the seasons. Can you tell us about like the kind of projects that you work around? Like what are your core responsibilities? As someone who's leading design, considering that the decisions you're making and with your peers are are very very important to kind of build that foundation for next decade or couple of decades.
Yeah, yeah. So Alstom is, I think, clearly focused on three key business verticals, and I'm not mostly talking from the let's say Alstom point of view. I'm just talking from my individual understanding and what I feel that design as a contribution we are making. So rolling stock is the product itself, which is the train set, which creates larger, let's say, teams for within the Alstom organization and also for deployment. There is a digital ecosystem to run this infrastructure, and that is another business vertical that we operate in. And every product that we design or let's say deploy in different markets has a critical element to it, because it has to serve for 30 to 40 years of lifespan, right? As you said.
Yeah.
So we have to maybe co-create that kind of product with the customer and different authorities in terms of what is their viewpoint towards that urban development or that corridor that they are developing in that perspective, right?
Yeah.
So we design mostly rolling stocks, which are the train sets from the perspective of functionality, the cultural relevance, the aesthetics point of view, but also a lot on human factors,
Yeah.
ergonomics, the material sustainability, and lots of other aspects about maintenance and ease of, let's say, resharing that same product into different
Yeah.
customer bases. So
Yeah.
that is what we do. Apart from that, in my view, the digital infrastructure when it comes to passenger information, the operators, kiosk and dashboards, the control centers, dashboards. So there is information design part as well played a lot within the offerings. So at large, it is more of a service design
Yeah.
operation, where industrial design is one part, human factors, information design is another part, design for manufacturing, which is again a critical aspect, is a big part of that.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of this industry in general. I think we had a chat and I mentioned you
Yeah.
thoroughly about it. And I think there's a lot of research that also goes behind, new projects. I'm just curious so I think we as a country are still developing in terms of our public transport and stuff, where some of the countries where Alstom is active, there's already a culture of these are developed countries. There's already culture for public transport. How much of of the process that you think is important in order to understand the culture? Like, for example, if you're designing for Asian markets, or Indian market, or French market to be specific, or European market? How have you seen some major shifts that you can think that we can talk about?
Yes, because I feel although there are certain elements of design which are more universal, because we are looking at from human perspective, so we have a certain commonality between using different product and services. But there's also a very strong cultural relevance to each of that region. So for example, if you look at the public transportation usage in Western or European markets versus the public transportation usage in Asian markets, maybe Tokyo or Shanghai or Mumbai, you will see a very different pattern of users who are part of that
Yeah.
ecosystem, right? So we try and put more focus on observing and capturing those elements of the city and the, let's say, the citizens and the people who are using that infrastructure, and use those relevant information and insights in designing different aspects of trains.
Yeah. I think when we were, having a conversation before the podcast, you also mentioned, the kind of strategic work you were doing at, Hyundai. And also, what I've also noticed in your journey, which is very special, is that you've been into spaces where you're working with, closely with operations, you're working closely with the, engineering teams, business at scale. But I think with your, like, after having a conversation with you, I've always realized that you always try to bring design to all of this. Just want to know your mindset towards that.
So interestingly, when I started my maybe career as a designer, I was mostly focused with the area of where I see great value in terms of simplifying product experiences, and that was the essential beginning of my understanding with product design. And slowly, when it, let's say, started exploring towards maybe more of a dynamic and diverse ecosystems, like for example, car is a much complex product than a watch, for to say so, or maybe I might be wrong. Watch is equally complex as a car. But when you start working with these different ecosystems of where it is made, how it is made, what is the supplier base, who are the end customer, and from where this product has been shaped to where this product has been sold, you start to understand the journey better, in my view. And to do so, you also have to invest your time in terms of understanding the business impact of your design. And that has been my constant drive to participate in discussions where design is not only put as a secondary thought, but also a primary drive to break into a new category of products, a new solution of the question, or maybe participating in much larger dialogues of how brand and business can impact with the help of design.
You were recently at PDF, right? Pune Design Festival, and I think you were also a speaker there.
Yes.
What were you talking about, if you can?
I was essentially talking about the similar line of thought, public infrastructure and mobility. So, and I had a great privilege of meeting so many interesting people, some very old friends from different domains. But essentially on mobility forum where I was part of, I had an opportunity to meet architect Prasanna Desai, a very renowned urban planner from Pune, and also Mr. Anuj Malhotra, who had been the urban planner for city of Srinagar. Now he's part of the Mumbai Dharavi Development Corporation, and he's heading the urban development plan. So those kind of conversations are also essential to understand what these different solutions can come together and be really inclusive in all possible ways. So, and I'm grateful to be part of these discussions and forums.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know. But like one of the guests who are coming to a podcast, I was having a chat with him about you, and he said you are his student, so it was wonderful to know as well. I'm talking about Anant.
Yes, of course. Anant has been my guru during my bachelor's times, and I'm looking forward to meet him also today.
Yeah. So this is a conversation that I've been that I've been a part of since my college days. Is like, how much is aesthetic important compared to being more functional? I think in the past, like last couple of decades, things were majorly designed for functional users. And I'm also keeping the Indian ecosystem in mind. Are you as a as a leader of such innovation label? You think keeping how much you're keeping aesthetic, on priority compared to like functionality, and how much you're focusing on building brands, making sort of visual design part of it.
A lot. I think I we cannot put them into in comparison. It has to be very very cohesive in that way. I think aesthetics are I mean for longest period of time, and I remember my earlier times with automotive design studios when we used to be called stylist and the styling studio,
Yeah.
to say so. To break away from that, um, let's say, connotation and understanding, it took a lot of effort from so many people whom I was fortunate to work with, and I feel that that break was something that made many things happening what we are seeing
Yeah.
today. Because aesthetics is not only for the purpose of beautifying a product. Aesthetics is something that conveys the essential characteristics of the product itself. So what we call product semantics, or
Yeah.
so aesthetics in my view are a dialogue more than appeasement.
Hmm. Yeah, love that take. I also noticed that you've been mentoring a lot of startups. You're a part of I am startup circle as well. What are the what do you talk about? What do you what are you what are the kind of projects that you're seeing people building lately around space design or like service design, to be specific, or in general? Just want to know your take as someone who's like helping people build their
Yeah,
companies.
interestingly, Deepak, I was more focused on my individual journey until very recently. But maybe I took a conscious call in also in terms of engaging myself with outside world. Specifically with IIM, what we are trying to do is to encourage and bring people from different aspects of businesses working towards sustainable solutions. And that could be from service design perspective, from battery technology, from green technology, from air pollution point of views, or from last mile mobility solutions, material innovation. A lot of them were also from
Hmm.
very deep research on ceramics, which can be used for space science.
Hmm.
And where I get to meet these different people, I also try and share what that business could take into a better shape with some design intervention.
Yeah.
Very simplistic way is also how to design your digital presence
Yeah.
to reach to a larger audience.
Other than that, like I think we I've been into conversations as well, as to with all this tariffs and everything, importing stuff from outside, and it's been a conversation for some time about why aren't we having more hardware startups, hardware brands coming out. But at the same time, people are a little finicky about not going into that space because it's very money heavy. You need a lot of funds to run that. How how do you see it's unfolding in our country? What do you think is the future of hardware goods, and such like consumer electronics, stuff like that?
I think I agree with you because I have seen very closely with some of the great ideas been diluted because it is very capex heavy. Sometimes even the investors' point of view, it is not the right time or maybe the right cost.
Yeah.
But I feel that it's changing a lot. If you also look at maybe small scale industries which have invested into a newer technology and newer forms of manufacturing, is building that foundational base. If I can say so, because in MSME also I feel that there is a lot of development which is happening.
Hmm.
Um and for the hardware, let's say manufacturing point of view, I feel we need some better policies also in place in terms of how we can fund these newer initiatives from state, let's say, side.
Hmm.
uh, because it needs a push. And
Yeah.
I feel not just in terms of hardware manufacturing, but also in terms of quality of our manufacturing. And that is an area where I feel we have come a good long run, but we still have to catch up.
Yeah. I think this also reminds me of I think the relevance and need for having design councils at every every spaces, industries, governments. I think we heavily talked about that as well in our last meet, and how do you want to talk about it? Where do you think we are not doing it enough as a community?
No, I very clearly feel, and I clearly voice it out, that we are not doing enough in terms of what we should be doing.
What is the best case scenario? How do you think we can kind of bring in more value for people, and that's design driven?
I think it's intent. We have to get the intent right. In my view, our intent is mostly to do with how we just be communicative, or we actually be having that intent of having a conversation. So
Yeah.
that I feel that it's more one-sided communication from all these different committees and bodies, but there is a strong need to also listen to what the market needs, what the audience needs, what the different challenges in doing a small business needs as a design. And from business community point of view, I also feel that they need to be more absorbent in terms of bringing in these expertise with them, and only then that dialogue or that conversation can be complete. Because in my view, committees are formed and there are a
Yeah.
lot of effort which has been going on, but it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think there needs to be more space for more people to join the table, and there should be some sort of I think some sort of a governance that needs to give opportunity to younger folks, even as well as something that I've also been talking about that's been missing. Snehal, you mentioned about your farming project. You said you were also you love farming and your history about farming. Would love to know more about that.
Yeah. So growing up time, Deepak was very much into the rural
Yeah.
parts of Maharashtra. I was born in a family of bureaucrats and academicians. Both my grandparents were into education. They were teachers, but also doing farming. And my father, all the other brothers, they also excelled in their own ways. But the roots to farm were always there.
Yeah.
So, and my mom, she was also a teacher. So the younger times were essentially playing with the animals, with the cousins, and going to the river, playing the fields, and that has stayed for all throughout the life. But now, when I see that I myself can invest my time and energy into the some hands-on skill sets that I can learn, play with the soil again, and especially after, like many of us,
Yeah.
after pandemic, we started questioning that where do you see your life, or where do you want to lead towards maybe the coming years. And since then I have invested a lot of time into developing a new farm as a mango orchard near Nasik. And my plan is also to establish an elderly wellness care maybe facility around that place. So let's see how it goes. Yeah.
It's actually a lot of it's actually a dream for a lot of people to kind of quit the city life and do farming.
Yeah.
And people are actually making business out of this, right?
Yes.
What are your plans for that? I mean, I'm sure mangoes and I think mangoes takes a lot of time to grow as well, right? So
Correct.
I'm sure it's like maybe a decade or a decade and a half of a plan that you may be been working around.
Correct. So I think in this venture, my mom and my elder brother, they are essentially helping me a lot to do the operations there, because they are close by and they can look after things and the people on the farm. But mangoes take, I think, about 5 years of time to mature, to come to, let's say, a first production cycle. But until that time, the rest of the part of the farm is also doing other farming in terms of the corn and onions and different vegetables and ragi, millets of different kinds, and that is helping run the
Yeah.
farm at the moment.
I'm also curious to know. So I think moving forward in the future, the kind of future we are moving towards, there's a talking about India to be specific. Like there's so many people, everyone needs to be fed, right?
Yeah.
And maybe at one point it's not gonna be enough, and maybe the kind of resources we have, we need to make it self-sustainable. What are your take on having a self-sustainable life towards maybe starting, like start from growing your own food?
True, absolutely true. And I think this is the part which, and thank you for bringing that up, because I would have, missed to talk about it. The food security, what you pointed at, is, yes, it is a concern for many of us going forward, especially the quality of food, the quality of air, and your own self-sustenance. I feel that is also the purpose of me investing my time into the farm, where I can be self-reliant for my basic necessities of life. And that comes to your answer, whether we should be more, looking at that perspective as well, then I feel absolutely yes. And there are people doing very interesting, let's say, proposals around co-living and co-farming, where people are coming together, buying a piece of land, cultivating it, developing it, also helping find better time with their dear ones, but at the same time trying to do good by planting more trees or conserving better solutions for water conservation or soil conservation, which is again a critical aspect today in Indian agriculture, I feel, because of the use of fertilizers and
Yeah.
whatever the dormant time that has been passed in the so-called green revolution. We have also kind of misused,
Yeah. Misused,
overused. Yes.
Yeah, that's something that I also concerns me. Right? We talk about design, we talk about transport ecosystems, but I think we don't have a lot of conversations about our consumption,
Yes.
consumption habits,
Yes.
especially being in cities. I think we consume maybe twice or thrice more than what would someone be maybe consuming in a village near Nashik. Like that's something that I think needs a dialogue as well.
True. If I can relate it back to my own, let's say, direction or decisions that I try to, even the conscious call that I took from moving from an automotive industry to let's say mass mobility, is that constant dialogue that you have with yourself, that in terms of your consumption, what are the good choices or the right choices that you can take. And maybe this was one of that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about how we, as a country, are doing with our public transport? What are the things that you think are getting better, and maybe there's more room to get better?
I feel we are seeing a good change in terms of how the infrastructure has been, put up. I see that there is a possibility of having the right speed of and right, you have to prioritize few things over the other in terms of where you are investing as a nation. And I feel digital economy is good, it's great, but the human skills in terms of building products and building services are the two areas where I feel we should invest more as a country.
Yeah.
And to do that, we have to first address the backbone of it, which is education. And I think, in my view, if I specifically put design education under that lens, I think we have a good opportunity to fill up that gap. of what, because we are still, one of the interviews that I was also seeing with Aishi, and she touched upon this aspect of design education, and I think it's important to have that conversation also much openly. All the institutes, and I think in India we have about, you mentioned about around 2000 plus institutes which are,
this is going
this is,
crazy, right?
yeah.
But maybe it's just a, I think it's just a business. They're just increasing their businesses by adding more courses. Let me just say that, right? Because I feel, and as someone who's around, who's running a sort of business, design consulting, I come across so many people who will reach out from colleges, and every time I find like there are new folks, and when I see their portfolio and interview them, I see that the foundational values are missing
in the
and that's something is very important. So we talked about having these associations, organizations not doing enough. I think it's nothing much gonna change if the people who are kind of like in the education sector are not doing enough. But at the same time, there are people who are trying to do good stuff.
Yes, absolutely,
It's like a good balance. I'm really intrigued where it's heading. I'm really curious to know, like, from your lens, what is a big problem that you think for design to solve in the next decade around urban mobility? You think?
If I look at only India perspective, or let's say the challenging economies point of view, a good integration of these infrastructures are the core problem, because all of these solutions are thought in let's say maybe an independent thought of how I am solving that specific problem, but unless there is a common dialogue between all these agencies while they are designing these solutions, that gap is always going to be there, in my view. So to address that, I think the agencies needs more cohesive way of working, bringing all the elements of the ecosystem together is going to be the next decade challenge. And even as a designer, and from a perspective of design practice, collaboration, we are already seeing that happening, right? There are so many different collaborations which are happening to come up with very great ideas about solving specific problems. We are doing an interesting project with the World Design Organization, and also the Bangalore Metropolitan Society. Is called I think, if I'm correcting it right, Protopolis, which is a prototype of Metropolis, and we are trying to touch upon different aspects of how a metropolis can function as a living entity, from healthcare, from public transportation.
What's the objective? It's for the city transport and
it's in collaboration with Taiwanese Institute, which had designed a new urban infrastructure solutions, and maybe we are doing a pilot from Bangalore to see how these collaboration can bring a better change that can be replicated across within India, around the world.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to know how do you think the government is also involved?
Yes, I think that is what with my understanding, the output should be that this pilot can only happen when there is the state involvement into it, right?
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, our neighbors, like we have like Singapore, and so we actually had Sundar sir on the podcast, like last weekend. He was someone who was heading Terminal 2, Bangalore Terminal 2 airport, and
Oh, nice.
the kind of stuff that he talked about, how he sustainably, they are making roads and how they are conserving water. Just actually, some of it was bizarre to me. Like, I think they have made like some tens of kilometers of road out of recycled plastic.
Yes.
So I think it's actually really interesting to know that there are organizations trying to work on these problems. How do you think like smaller community, smaller collective can be create that wave to kind of innovate collectively and like do pitch some great projects? Or what do you think, what's the best case scenario that you think that you'd like to see around?
Uh, I would say maybe a conscious consumption is one part of the, let's say, a larger collective effort, but there's also a need of quality, let's say, deliverables in terms of how we design, manufacture, and produce our products. So even if you look at smaller clusters in craft or maybe handmade goods, like I was at PDF and I met a very old friend Marcus, who's creative director of IKEA, and we were talking about what are the different initiatives they are doing to help these small clusters do better business from India, from other parts of the world with IKEA. So it's a very design-led organization, and that reflects into their uh, communication, collaboration also with these small clusters. So what we need to also establish is a more organized way of reaching to these different small clusters, coming out from their, let's say, limited reach of the market, and bring those products for much larger audience within India, outside of India.
Yeah. Still, I'm really like like when I look at your the proper projects you've worked on, you've been in some really amazing rooms with the really amazing people. As a leader, as a senior designer, what are your habits that you follow to kind of consistently learn? Because I think you're sitting at a place where people look forward to you, and it might be maybe creating sometimes sort of a pressure on you to know about the world. What just want to know your learning habits and how you know about things, and make sure that whatever you're bringing to the table is sort of top notch.
I feel what is needed, and I tell because what I experience and what I see with especially the young designers and also some senior leadership teams, is that if you have that clear mindset of entering a room and not being the smartest of them all, you will keep learning. If you enter that room with a mindset that, oh yes, I know everything, you'll stop absorbing, you'll stop learning. And
Yeah.
I think as a designer, the most important trait or skill, or whatever you call that, you need to have, is to be more observant, more also listener to the things. So I've since the beginning of my career, I've also been, as you said, very fortunate to learn from all the great leaders, like from Tata Motors times, where I worked with Ajay, Jayant, Pratap as well at that point in time. With Hyundai, I had an opportunity to work with Sangyup, Luke, Simon, and Diana. It has shaped a lot of my perspective towards how you establish your design narrative within larger organizations, to make sure that it is not seen as a part of expense, but as a part of contributor to much larger business benefit. So, and that is what has kept me going in that sense.
Lovely, lovely. That takes us to the end of the conversation, Snehal. Snehal, before we wrap up, I think I'm just curious to know, like, with your amazing experience and how you started as a young designer and been a part of different strategies and like large scale projects. What's something you've changed your mind about in like last 10 years? What's the biggest mindset shift that has happened?
I think intent, and why I'm stressing a lot upon it, because until very recently, I myself was not very sure about what is that core, let's say, shift that comes in someone's approach of leading a career or your individual journey. I think intent is something that keeps you on your track. So in the last 10 years, what has made me constantly go forward or go for is what I choose to do
Yeah.
as a creative professional. Maybe that is what I will continue to
Yeah.
do, whether it is public transportation or maybe taking interest in handmade Indian craft or farming. It is that intent
Yeah.
that I am trying to go for.
Yeah. Awesome to have you on the podcast, Neil.
Yeah,
Who will love to know about your journey and what your the amazing projects you're working around.
absolutely. Thank you very much, Deepak. I'm very grateful that you connected and we could speak today at length. I'm very inspired also to know your journey because you've been trying to bring out so many different voices on your show, and I wish you the best with that.
Thanks a lot, Neil.
Thank you.